Thank you so much, Vicky. An amazing job pronouncing my name. I know it's not an easy one. Welcome, everyone. As Vicky said, I'm the moderator for today's discussion. I'm very excited to sit alongside with these badass women. In order to kick off the discussions, I would like to share some statistics that I think are very relevant. So the first insights I would like to share was from the census data report, where it shows that on average, for every dollar a man earns, women make 82 cents. There's certain analysis where explaining why is that the case, explaining why basically women earn less than men. And certain reports are saying that simply women don't feel comfortable asking for a salary increase, for a promotion, or in general, negotiating their worth. However, the more interesting fact I would like to share came from the Harvard Business School, where I believe it was last year they published a report that shows the reality is that women feel very comfortable negotiating their worth. However, they get more often a negative response compared to men. 20% of the times men ask for a promotion, they get it, versus only 15% of the times women get a positive response. So obviously these are very interesting statistics, and these can vary by industry, by location. So the first question would be to Sarah, and I would love to understand what are the obstacles you have faced, and also how you've been able to overcome these obstacles when you negotiate your worth.
First and foremost, go in with a very value-driven argument, right? So I've had people come to me saying, oh, the Bay Area is expensive. I want a higher salary because, I want to be able to afford this apartment or this, that, and the other. As a business owner, it's not my job to necessarily afford somebody's lifestyle, but I think it's a very fair argument to come in and say, like, hey, I was able to generate X amount of revenue in sales. I was able to generate X amount of revenue in upsales. I was able to sustain X amount of client churn rate, or I was able to do this, that, or the other, right? And I think that when you come forth with a very value-driven argument, and when you try to keep the emotions to a very low level, that oftentimes has been the most successful way for me personally as a boss to feel really good about increasing salaries. When you go to your boss or your manager, especially if you're going to go negotiate with a co-founder, right? They care a lot about the company and they feel a lot of responsibility in their position. And if they see that you're in alignment with what they're trying to deliver as results, then they're going to want to really heavily incentivize you in order to all get on the same page together and all run along the same path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. A win-win situation, let's say. That's how we should
totally. Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. What about you, Shana? I would love to also hear your opinion about the topic.
Yeah, I can kind of put this in a different perspective of recently I went through a job interview process, and one of the things that I realized that you have to think of, and that was after not having done anything for about 5 years, it was going in and making sure that you are actively aware of the things that you've provided to your company. And a lot of the times, even if it's in a non-traditional sense of how you've done certain things, that is an accomplishment in itself, and you need to be able to advocate for yourself. And a lot of the times that goes with maybe writing a script for yourself, or doing the background on those numbers, and just being able to sit and practice it in front of a few people that you're okay with, and then go and bring it to a more pressured situation. A lot of times we do get caught in those scenarios where we're not sure how to advocate for ourselves, which I think is just unfortunately taught to society. And so the other thing that I really leaned on was reaching out to other people to ask them what they would be looking for in a position that they were going into. So being able to reach out to those people and say, hey, what would you want? What would you see in this position? Here's what this company has looked at. What are things that you would have? And give them your practice answer and see what they think. And if there's anything that they can highlight, because if those are people that you're looking at as mentors or just resources, they can give you the nitty gritty, and then you can feel confident in being able to go back to whoever you're talking to, whether you're in a job position currently or interviewing for another job position. Then you can at least feel ready about what you're going to say. You're not going to stumble over your words, especially now that we're doing everything virtual. You can have a little cheat sheet sitting right over here and they'll never know. And you can kind of move forward that way. When I did it in my current position to say that, hey, I'm doing all of this work. It was the same thing as what Sarah said. I went back and said, this is what I'm doing. It looks like this position. It looks like the similar person's position. Why am I not having this title? And that was the discussion that we had. And thankfully it led to a very easy progression of, okay, salary. So even if you're going in with the goal of like, I want a pay raise because I have done X work, or I want a title change because I've done X work, and you know that that can move forward in your career. So think of that career trajectory that you want and which will help you in that space. And if you can get both, aim for both. Like always aim high and then work it back from there, and know which things you're after, what you want, and then the things that you're willing to sacrifice if they do ask for it. But don't give them everything at once. You can work your bargaining chip there.
Totally. I think preparation is key. And just like a quick note from my side, every time I go and negotiate with my employer, I actually have prepared a full deck. I go on full pitch mode. Obviously, I'm doing like account management, so I'm used on pitching, but I prepare a full deck, and it's like a full pitch, like exactly show your value, and you have done a lot of preparation yourself. Cool. Obviously, the current environment is slightly different. We all know about the recent developments, especially in the US market. A lot of companies are struggling. There's on a hiring freeze, or they have to lay off people. So the current environment make negotiation more complex, let's say. And it's another interesting fact that I researched upon was that if you compare the current environment with the recession on 2008, what happened back then, a lot of the jobs lost were primarily held by men. However, a lot of the jobs that are at risk or have been lost right now are primarily held by women. So it adds more complexity, let's say, on the topic. So I'd love to hear Melissa's thoughts on, in the current environment, should we negotiate? And if we should negotiate, how do we do it?
Yes, it's definitely a tricky question, and I think that it's not a straightforward yes or no question, unfortunately, because I think that the number one thing that we need to have at this time is empathy. I think we need to have empathy for just the current state of things, and so that's not just the clients that we're working with, but it's our employers. And so I think that those who are with companies and fortunate to not be part of the mass wave of unemployment and not part of major layoffs, I think that there needs to be an acknowledgement that we're weathering a really difficult time, and that we all kind of need to stick together as we do that, and really kind of step back and have that perspective. Now, if your company is doing layoffs, if they're freezing roles, if they're taking a lot of really aggressive measures to try and preserve, the team that is in place, it can be viewed as pretty insensitive to approach a negotiation, unless, like, my fellow panelists have spoken about, you're doing so in a really, really value-oriented and driven way. And you're approaching it as a true negotiation, in terms of, you were teed up for a promotion, you were teed up for a raise. These were conversations that were in motion, and you are doing significant work. You believe confidently that you've earned this raise, you've earned this promotion. Then no, you shouldn't take a step back and decide that you shouldn't need it. You should have an honest conversation with your employer and understand, how are raises being handled right now? How are promotions being handled? Are we putting, you should be able to have that conversation. Are we putting a pause on these things? Is there going to be an opportunity to do retroactive pay? Once we've weathered this, if I demonstrate patience, is there an opportunity for us in a few months to, look at, how compensation can be retroactively impacted? But again, it needs to be a really honest and sincere conversation that comes from, a mutual understanding of the current state of things, and just asking that you want your expectations set. But I think coming into it, like, again, my fellow panelists noted, if you come in with the value you're bringing, the impact that you're driving, you come in confident, and you remember that it is a negotiation. And so you are prepared for counter arguments, and you're prepared for what might be thrown at you throughout the process, I think that's the best way that you can handle it.
Totally, very good point. Jayne, I love your glasses. I would love to hear your thoughts about the topic as well.
Sure. I would say I probably have more experience with the initial negotiation kind of stages. Probably similar to you. I invested in a speech coach, and part of it was negotiation. So if you even look at women founders, there's a real lack of representation at the cap table. I think the last study I've seen is like 36% of startups or employees are female, but like 6% of the equity is held by females. So for me, especially I'm a daughter of a father that was a CFO of a lot of startups that took them public. My dad taught me very early on how to negotiate equity. And I unapologetically and actually proudly appreciate that I probably am the highest paid person or the highest band. I always aim to be the most expensive employee of my position, and not because I'm trying to prove something other than I know what my value is. I've dedicated my whole life to my practice. I take myself seriously, and I am confident when I go in that, like, when I talk about my negotiation, I ask if they are banded, I'm like, what's the lowest band? What's the highest band? And I aim to negotiate at the highest band. And again, that's a balance of equity and salary. Sometimes in my life, I aim more for salary, and sometimes I aim more for equity. And it really just depends on the circumstance. I have 2 kids too. So I have to like think about the risk and de-risk of those situations, having to take care of those little ones as well.
Awesome. Does your dad offer workshops for more people about negotiation?
He would. He would do it. Yeah, for sure.
It sounds he did an amazing job with you. Cool. So very interesting points across the board. So let's say if we are in a position where we cannot negotiate for certain reasons, like Melissa shared some concerns about like empathy, or like the company is not doing well, or other factors, then how can we make sure we stay top of mind, we keep growing ourselves? And let's say once we are in a position to negotiate, like let's say we push it back after 6 months or 8 months, how do we stay on top of mind with our employers?
Yeah, for sure. And I actually also want to touch a little bit on what Melissa said regarding COVID. I think that was a very empathetic answer. And, I want to be very transparent that as a business owner, FeedMob is not like immune from what's going on with COVID, right? Like we are having struggles ourselves. We've done a lot already to extend our runway. Like I've taken a personal 50% pay decrease, as well as the other co-founders of the company did that as well. And it's all about, preserving our workforce and doing whatever we can in order to extend our cash position so that we can see this out. I think, I still want to position that I'm incredibly optimistic about the way that we'll all come out of COVID. Like I think that the economy will recover after we come out of COVID, and I think that we will see a rebound. But I think that, the truth is, for companies that are impacted by COVID, the name of the game right now has to be survival. Like it has to be, because you need to be able to see a light at the end of the tunnel. You need to be able to participate in the economic recovery, and you need to be a part of job creation post COVID, right? And so I appreciate Melissa's answer, because I think that, it is super important, especially if that the business leaders are in a position where they're having to do very drastic actions to keep the company afloat, that, you really approach them with as much empathy as possible. I think another thing to emphasize is the idea of, negotiating and saying like, hey, when this is all over, and the company is at a more healthy, stable level, then can I have, can I like have this salary deferred so that I can have this once the company is healthier? I think that right now it's super appropriate to negotiate on equity, because I think that sends a signal to your company that, hey, like I know that you can't give me a higher salary, but I'm committed to the business. I'm committed to seeing this company through the crisis. And I would love to just instead have equity instead of having a raise right now, because that doesn't cost the company anything. outside of potential like fees around adjustment to the cap table. And that shows that you're committed to being in the trenches with your leaders and working your tail off during COVID. So I would definitely focus on equity right now if your company is experiencing challenges. But I mean, in general with COVID, it's gonna be tricky. It's gonna be challenging, but you know, we'll all get through this together.
Thank you. So the last question I have, so we talk a lot about the current situation with coronavirus and like how it's affected everyone. How have you been able to stay motivated? How have you been able to stay productive during this current situation? And I'd love to hear Shana on that.
Yeah, I definitely have hit the motivation struggle, but we're bouncing back slowly but surely. The first thing I want to say is that not anything that you do is not going to be perfect, and it's not going to last the whole time. You're going to come and go in waves of feeling really productive and feeling like you just want to continue sleeping and watching Netflix all day. That is okay. It's going to happen. The first things that I've done to stay motivated, I've definitely created a schedule, especially making sure that I am just waking up at the same time, that after lunch I'm going outside at some point. I have a hard stop time because it can be very easy to just get into work mode and want to continue. So I definitely set that key schedule. Each week our team has different times to actually just engage, both during our professional meetings, but also we have a couple of times during the week where we just do fun hangout meetings. So we have a Friday Feel session. This week we had just moved into a new office before COVID-19 happened, and so we were supposed to have our office party this past week. So instead we're having a margarita happy hour tomorrow, where our boss is covering our delivered margaritas, which is really nice. And so throughout the day, we also have different questions that we ask within Slack. And so having those engagements, because we were such a close-knit team and now we've had to shift to everybody being remote, having time to just engage with each other, or 3 of us have a 30-minute meeting that we do every Tuesday. That's just to catch up, but it's really just to talk about what we're doing and what we're working on, so that we still stay in the loop. As well, create a list that is outside of your work of things that you want to do. So I have my own COVID-19 personal life list that gives me something motivating to do after I'm done with work. So I've cleaned out my closet, I have deep cleaned my car, I have organized papers that I've been meaning to, like we've gotten rid of half my wardrobe probably. So having those external goals can keep you motivated and feeling better about the tasks that you're doing. So nice balance of work and play, but also just finding that time to engage with other people rather than kind of sitting in our holes at home are the best ways that I've been staying motivated.
Thank you. Quickly, I want to hear everyone's opinion on that. Melissa, do you want to also share your tips with the audience?
Yeah, sure. I definitely will admit that it's a struggle, and I think that you've got, you know, and I hate to overgeneralize, but I think you have definitely the 2 main categories of people. You have the people, the parents, and the non-parents. And I think I can speak as a parent. You know, and for other parents, I know that it's been extra challenging managing childcare and work and that sort of balance, and feeling that what little personal time you may have had before is even less, if that was possible. And so, you know, I think that what I really do is look for wins. I look for wins throughout my day in both personal and professional. And so, you know, when I see other colleagues going above and beyond and working their tails off, or, you know, there's different channels that we have at Adjust on Slack. You know, we have a parents channel where we're all kind of sharing jokes and memes. And so, you know, having venting sessions, things like that. But like I said, wins, you know, so if I feel overwhelmed with work and I can, I'll just stop Slack and stop work, and I'll take, you know, 20 minutes and I'll go and, you know, sit with my daughter, or I'll go and, you know, do something that I need to do to kind of clear my mind, like I would have if I was at work and I would have gone for a walk and get lunch. I try and incorporate that. You know, I think the other piece of this is I go back to gratitude. I go back to thinking about, you know, what is going on in the world around us, and the fact that I, you know, maybe I'm overwhelmed and maybe I'm feeling frustrated, but I am grateful for where I am, and the fact that I have a job, and the fact that I have a home, and the fact that I, you know, can pay my bills, and that I'm not living check to check. And so, you know, that is another thing that helps keep me really motivated, is just going back to that gratitude and thinking about and trying to stay dialed into what's going on in the world around me, and making sure that I'm aware of, you know, everything is relative. It's okay to have a bad day, and it's okay to feel bad about that. And it's okay to feel bad about your own personal circumstances, but it's also okay to, you know, remind yourself that there's a lot of people out there that have a lot worse.
Awesome. So we have some very interesting questions from the audience. So jumping into that. So the first question, in startups where performance reviews process is less mature, what is the appropriate timing to ask for promotions? Sarah or Jayne, do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I can speak about that. Unless you want to go, Jayne. Cool. So in startups, that is a huge struggle for startups, is doing performance reviews. Like, I'll be the first to admit that FeedMob has not figured that out completely, or at all. You know, I think that the easiest way in startups to ask for raises or promotions is to, you know, create a level of mutual accountability between you and your boss, or you and your direct manager, even if it is one of the co-founders of the business, and just say, like, hey, I want to start a dialogue with you, even from the onset of your job start, and just say, like, I want to understand, in order for me to get to the next role in your eyes, what would I need to accomplish? Like, what would I need to do? Right? And even put pen to paper and work on a plan with your manager or with the co-founder, and just say, okay, so these are the things that you're expecting of me to accomplish. And if I'm able to accomplish this, it means that I could get to the next level in my career. And then as soon as you're able to consistently accomplish those things that you've, you know, made an agreement on with your leader or with your manager, then I think that that's time to start having the conversation around, like, okay, so we're nearing me like accomplishing all of these items or all these KPIs that we agreed upon. Let's start discussing what are the next steps for a promotion coming up, or do you think that that's still something that's on the table for me, right? And I think the reason why is because, like, you have to realize, and I think the incredible benefits of being at a startup, right, are that you have the opportunity to grow really fast. You have the opportunity to contribute a lot. You can really, really see where your contributions come into play because startups are so small. And I think, like, the only downside really is that they don't have standardized performance reviews, and that, you know, those kind of things aren't really well organized. So if you're able to create that relationship with your manager where you have a level of mutual accountability and where you're helping them organize themselves, then, you know, it's very reasonable to ask for raises and promotions when you feel like you've attained the level that you think you should be at.
Jayne, I would love to hear your thought on the next question. So the next one is, what mistakes have you made when negotiating a salary increase or equity? I think it's perfect for you.
Great. Yeah. Equity, I would say you should try to always know how many shares are out, so you know what percentage of the company overall you own. It's not necessarily how many shares you have, but it's percentage of ownership, and obviously the valuation of the company. And then also you have to realize at what stage the company is at. So if you're going to an early startup, you have to realize that you probably won't get paid at parity to what you came out of, and you have to be okay with that. Like, the whole point of going to a startup typically is not that you're going to be rich in cash. So if that's your expectation, then don't go to an early startup. Don't even go maybe to a startup that's in hyper growth mode as well. I'd also say you have to be patient with recalibration. So most startups go through phases of recalibration. So you may have come in as like head of digital, but then 2 years later, all your peers have, you know, hopefully you're the more senior, but you could be in a position where you might need to be recalibrated to a level below, but you want to make sure that you're still paid, you know, at parity or even more. So what I like to do too is create a development plan early on with my manager, and then have incentives throughout. So like an equity refresh at X month or, kind of time period. I try to do more around the equity refreshes than I do around like hard cash. Like, yes, annual bonus is nice, but I prefer equity refreshes, just depending on my kind of position in the company.
Okay, perfect. So we have 4 more minutes. Is there anything else from the panelists that you would love to share with the audience that maybe I didn't ask you, or like you want to share more thoughts on a question that someone else answered? Just want to make sure I get the most of your time.
Yeah, I'd love to share some thoughts about motivation just from my perspective. So for me, like, this is probably the most motivated I've ever been because, I feel a lot of ownership over the company that I co-founded, and I don't like to see the company struggle. And, I want to make sure that we can preserve jobs within our company. But what I will say is, I think as a leader, I want to go to Melissa's point around empathy. Like, as a leader, it is so important to have empathy for all the people that you're working with and around their motivation. Like, as much as I want every single person within FeedMob to be at 100% every single day, I think it's incredibly important if you see somebody struggling or if you see that somebody's not getting things done. I think it's best during this time to just give them the benefit of the doubt and wait until they're willing to have a conversation. And instead of just jumping down their throats, genuinely ask them, like, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Is there anything you want to share with me? Because, I've had these conversations with people and I've asked them how they're doing, and they've ended up telling me things around, family members getting COVID because their family lives in New York, or they've had other issues where they're scared or they're going stir crazy in their apartment, or, there's just there's a lot going on, and we're really inundated, and we're really being challenged, not necessarily just individually, but as like the human race. And so I think it's incredibly important to, if you really want to motivate your employees and you want them to produce at a high level, like, try to be human first and foremost, and genuinely ask them every single day how their day is going, and try to really share with them something positive that, can help brighten their day, right? Like, we have an ability to be impactful on each other. And I think that it's so important right now to be as positive as you possibly can when impacting people, and be as human as you can, and be a support for people if you have the ability to be supportive.
Totally, very fair. Shana or Melissa, any last thoughts from your side? We only have 2 minutes. I have to wrap it up, but anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was watching the news this weekend, and Madeleine Albright was on CNN, and she was asked a question about the memes that are going around about the fact that majority of a lot of the countries that are facing this crisis and doing so quite well have women leaders, and what were her thoughts on that. And I really loved her answer, which was that inherently women are multitaskers. They're used to navigating work and job and work, household, family, and a myriad of various tasks. And it makes them very adaptable. And especially during a crisis, that's really, really relevant. And so I think it's really important for women to consider that this is an inherent strength that we have, and to use it, and to focus and use this time to think about, how should you reprioritize your time? How do you stay malleable? How do you stay flexible? How do you understand that there are a lot of moving targets and there's a lot of changing conditions, and be flexible in your thinking and your approach? And if you show those skill sets and you demonstrate those abilities in your workforce, it will be noted and it will be respected. And when it does come time to have that negotiation and have that discussion, remember this and use it as part of your negotiation, and know that you're inherently well equipped to help your employer, weather this storm.
Mm-hmm. Shana, one last thought from your side before we wrap it up.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this whole space is new, but this is the time for you to be able to sit at home and research and learn and build up your own personal self. And that is the main encouragement that I would give. There's so many people giving, you know, free webinars, and people that you've been wanting to hear speak are doing a bunch of free things. Take advantage of those. People are home. So if there's that one person you wanted to talk to or reach out to or put your name out to, take those risks and get very involved with those people or following the companies, so that once we are kind of over this curve, you have set that trail and you've set a memorable moment for you to be able to move forward and feel a bit more confident in what you're wanting to do. But also, one of the number one things that I did recently and have encouraged people to do recently is that if you are in the position to be able to look for another job or get into the space where you can get to the point of negotiation, the first few questions you should ask are how they treated their employees during this time and what they did to support them and what resources were provided, so that you can see the type of culture within the company. Everybody will sell D&I, everybody will sell everything else that they have. Right now is the important part, to see how this company stepped up to the plate during such a major time in all of our lives. And that can give you probably the best insight to what a company is doing and willing to do for you.
Thank you. Everyone share very important notes. There's more questions about like mentorship and some other questions. So for the audience, feel free to reach out to any of us. Obviously we have limited time today during the panel, but we would love off record to answer more questions. Thanks again, ladies. Then I'll hand over back to Vicky to talk about the breakouts.